An emergency broadcast on TV announces the existence of a new virus that has appeared at an airport. Infected people become incredibly violent, and soon, the airport is on fire. 2 months later, the virus spreads worldwide, turning into a global pandemic. It transforms people into zombie-like beings called ferals, seen as raging beasts. The government tries to establish a quarantine, but many citizens protest, fighting for the rights of the ferals, claiming they're still people. The army takes over the streets, clashing with civilians, only making the situation worse. One afternoon, all TV channels lose their signal. Abigail and her brother get a call from their father, a pilot, who explains he's busy helping people but promises they'll be safe with their mother. Suddenly, they hear a noise upstairs, and the family rushes out of the house. As they're about to get in the car, a feral jumps out and attacks their mother, killing her. Abigail hides under the car, forced to watch as the feral attacks her brother too. A police siren wails nearby, scaring the feral away. Her brother calls her name, but their mother, now transformed into a feral, finishes him off. When Abigail cries, her mother hears her and charges at her, only to be shot by Cassius. He rescues Abigail, and she thanks him with a hug. Her brother starts transforming too, so Cassius makes Abigail close her eyes before shooting him. 10 years later, the world is in a post-apocalyptic state. Few humans remain, and nature has reclaimed the cities. In the forest, a now teenage Abigail hunts with Cassius. She skillfully takes down a deer, but Cassius scolds her for rushing and not being patient. That night, as they sleep, a tripwire alarm startles Cassius awake. Investigating, he finds some fuzz stuck in the wire and hears noises nearby. Rushing to calm the horses, he draws his gun just in time to shoot an incoming feral. Realizing it was likely a scout for a horde, he wakes Abigail, and they leave. For days, they travel, stopping occasionally to rest the horse, while Cassius continues training Abigail. One afternoon, they spot a man shooting a feral, unaware of a second creature approaching from behind. Abigail fires to help but hits both the man and the feral. Another feral emerges from a car, forcing Cassius to kill it. While Abigail searches the car for supplies, Cassius ends the wounded man suffering with a machete and takes his shoes. Just then, more cars arrive, and a group of survivors surrounds them with weapons. The survivors inspect the dead man and assume Cassius and Abigail killed him for supplies. As the leader threatens them, Cassius and Abigail knock down 2 people and seize their weapons. Tension rises as both sides aim at each other until a pregnant woman named Megan steps in to calm things down. Suddenly, the horses panic, and a feral horde appears. Everyone opens fire, but the ferals are too many. Cassius and Abigail fight hand-to-hand, while the others struggle. A woman preparing a Molotov is attacked, causing the bomb to explode on a car, throwing Cassius back. A bitten survivor tries to take his own life. The leader is grabbed by a massive feral and brutally beaten to death. Megan's husband, David, is tackled but kicks the feral off. Abigail helps the couple into a car, and Cassius kills a few more creatures before joining them. The massive feral, realizing his mate was killed, roars in fury. On the road, Abigail checks their ammo and finds they've lost most of it. Megan explains they were heading to a riverside colony and that she's in her 35th week of pregnancy, meaning the baby is due soon. However, Cassius and Abigail doubt the colony's survival. Every settlement they've seen has fallen. Suddenly, the car dies, forcing them to continue on foot. They reach an abandoned town and decide to spend the night there. After securing a building, Megan offers food, but Cassius and Abigail refuse, only eating what they hunt to avoid infection. The couple insists the colony has supplies and doctors, but it's a week's journey away. Abigail shares that she and Cassius plan to reach the west coast and escape to the islands by boat. That night, Cassius sets up tripwires and examines a map, advising the couple on the safest route. He refuses to go with them, believing the horde will return for revenge. Abigail tries to convince him otherwise, but he stands firm. Later, unable to sleep, Cassius and David talk. Cassius reveals he always keeps a bullet for himself in case he's bitten, while David only has a cigarette and a twisted ankle. As they bond, Cassius agrees to help them reach the colony. The next morning, Abigail hears a noise and goes downstairs to investigate. A feral attacks, making her drop her gun, but she swiftly kills it with her machete. Another feral chases her upstairs, and she throws it out of a broken window, nearly falling herself, until Cassius catches her just in time. By the time the horde reaches the building, the group is already gone. A feral trips a wire, triggering a small explosion. Later, Abigail recognizes the area and remembers a civil airport nearby where her father kept a small plane. Cassius wants to avoid it, fearing it's a death trap, but the group votes to go, forcing him to follow. At the airport, they find no planes, until Abigail discovers her father's hangar. Inside, there's a plane and David, knowing mechanics, gets to work fixing it. While he works, Cassius and Abigail search the building. Abigail finds a picture of herself with her dad and puts it back on the wall. Just then, the horde arrives, forcing the group to board the plane even though it isn't ready. Cassius fights off the ferals while David manually moves the propeller to start it. Abigail, with limited flying knowledge, struggles to take off, and a feral clings to the door. Cassius shoots it off just in time. The plane finally lifts off, but moments later, it starts failing. As the aircraft descends, Abigail tries to land it safely, but it crashes into trees before hitting the ground. Luckily, it lands on its wheels, and everyone survives with minor injuries. They spot a nearby train station and decide to rest there. Cassius checks the map. It'll take 2 days to reach the colony, so they plan to leave in the morning. Abigail counts their remaining ammo and finds it alarmingly low. That night, Megan and Cassius share a quiet moment. Cassius admits she reminds him of his late wife. He reveals that he had to kill her infected family, and later, unable to bear the loss, she took her own life. Cassius shares a story about a kid in his hometown who got bitten. Since the wound didn't hit an artery, it took him a couple of days to fully transform. Meanwhile, David finds a private spot to check his ankle, revealing it's not twisted. The wound is actually a bite. Knowing he should end things, he holds up the gun but can't bring himself to do it. The next day, the group keeps moving. Under the strong sun, David starts feeling sick, and Cassius notices blood on his leg. Waiting until the women are ahead, Cassius pushes David against a tree, checks his ankle, and confirms his suspicion. He gives David the option to tell the group on his own terms, but if he doesn't do it soon, Cassius will shoot him. That evening, they find a house with its lights on. As they approach, a voice asks what they want. Cassius thinks it's too dangerous, but Abigail steps forward, explaining they need help. She swears they mean no harm and mentions the pregnant woman. Norton opens the door, holding them at gunpoint, and tells them to leave their weapons in a chest outside. Once they comply, he invites them in, acting sweet and welcoming. Cassius points out that the house is power, and Norton explains he's an engineer, having built devices for electricity and hot water. He also mentions a wife, but ignores Megan when she asks where she is. Norton shares bread and vegetables with them, and Abigail is happy to take a shower. Cassius finally gets to connect his laptop and look at old pictures, revealing his wife had been pregnant before the pandemic. Later, Megan confesses to Cassius that she's scared. She hasn't felt the baby move since they arrived. She makes him promise that if anything happens to her, he'll protect her child. Meanwhile, Norton shares a drink with everyone, explaining he's lived there for 20 years. He knows about the colony, but isn't interested in joining, preferring solitude. He then rants about how people are too obsessed with returning to the old ways, saying humanity deserved the pandemic for destroying the planet and their ethics. He even calls the virus a form of evolution, claiming only the strong survive. Cassius notices a strange knife on the table, but Norton quickly takes it away. Meanwhile, David, feeling sicker by the second, rushes to the bathroom and sees the infection spreading. When he comes out, he finds his friends unconscious. The drinks were spiked. Norton, now wearing a lab coat, holds a strange machine. He recognizes David's infection and activates the device, which emits a sound that makes David collapse in pain. Norton explains that it's like a dog whistle, but for the infected. Before David passes out, the horde is seen arriving at the train station, continuing their search. Moments later, David wakes up in a basement, tied up with the others. Norton, taking notes for his experiment, reveals his infected wife, locked in a cage. He lets her out and uses his device to control her, making her attack the group. Cassius and Abigail kick her away, but she turns to David, who breaks free and fights back. However, David isn't fully transformed yet, so he manages to push through the pain and break the others' ropes. Cassius grabs a gun and shoots at Norton, who immediately runs. The group rushes upstairs and locks the door, but Norton starts hacking at it with an axe. As they reach the car, Norton watches from a distance as they drive off, his wife growling at him. When they enter the forest, the horde finally catches up. They drive as fast as possible, but a fallen tree blocks the road, forcing them to continue on foot. The horde is closing in, so they open fire, but David runs out of ammo. Knowing he'll turn soon, he tells the others to go while he buys them time. Cassius gives him a bullet, and the group leaves. David smokes a cigarette and fights the ferals hand-to-hand, managing to take down a few. But the big feral sneaks up behind him and breaks his neck. The rest of the horde chases the survivors, forcing Abigail to cover Cassius as he carries Megan. She yells for help, catching the attention of the colony guards, who quickly gun down the ferals. Seeing the bodies and bright lights, the remaining horde retreats into the forest. Once inside the colony, Megan is taken to the infirmary, where a midwife tends to her. After meeting the colony leader, Cassius tells Abigail they should leave soon. Humans can't be trusted. But Abigail is tired of running and ignores him. The midwife tells Cassius that the baby is fine, but Megan only has a few hours left. Before dying, she names her daughter Hope and gives Cassius a locket, reminding him of his promise. Meanwhile, Norton arrives at the forest and finds the bodies. While wandering, he spots the colony. At that moment, the horde attacks him, but he quickly regains control with his device. Smirking, he announces it's time for revenge. Inside the colony, Cassius takes care of Hope while Abigail bonds with local teens. That evening, she joins a small party where alcohol is passed around. When two guards fall asleep, a few teens sneak into a tunnel. Abigail follows and finds a strange remote, but before she can touch it, Roderick stops her. He explains that the entire colony is rigged with explosives. If the ferals invade, the remote will blow everything up. However, there's a hatch that leads to an abandoned dam where survivors can escape. The next morning, Norton tricks a guard on a boat, kills him, and allows a feral to climb into the colony, taking out the second guard. With the gates unguarded, Norton sends the horde in. As ferals slaughter survivors, some manage to fight back. Abigail saves Roderick and assigns tasks. Those with weapons must take high positions to shoot, while Roderick leads survivors to the dam. Meanwhile, the midwife takes Hope from Cassius, so he can search for Abigail. The colony leader tries to flee, but is killed by a feral. Abigail saves two young girls while Cassius stabs a creature to protect some teens. They reunite and fight together, using guns and hand-to-hand combat. Spotting an opening, they try to escape, but Cassius gets distracted by Norton. A feral tackles him down, and after a struggle, Cassius stabs the creature. But before he can react, Norton starts kicking him, ranting about creating a safer world. Cassius fights back, slamming Norton into a wall and smashing his device until it's broken. The ferals immediately swarm Norton, killing him. The remaining survivors reach the dam, but Roderick hesitates to detonate the explosives. Abigail isn't out yet. Inside the colony, the big feral attacks Abigail, but Cassius hits it with an oar. When it falls, Abigail notices its bracelet. It's her father. Shocked, she freezes until Cassius snaps her out of it and drags her toward the hatch. Just as they escape, Roderick blows up the colony, wiping out the entire horde. At the dam, an infected survivor panics. As Cassius tries to calm him, a feral jumps out and kills him. It then turns to attack Cassius, leading to a brutal fight. They struggle until the feral pins Cassius down, ready to bite. This time, Abigail waits for the perfect moment and shoots, killing the creature without harming her friend. As the survivors watch the colony burn, they wonder what to do next. Abigail says they can rebuild in the dam, and Cassius reveals he stole Norton's notebook, with instructions to build a generator. So that's it. Hope you enjoy the story. Subscribe and press the bell icon for more videos.